Well, welcome back to the podcast, everybody. Today I have Rachael with Mira 3 Photography with me today. She is a mama, storyteller, amazing Western photographer, and I am so excited to have her on to share her story today and just a little bit more about agriculture and the Western way of life and photography through her lens. So, Rachael, I would love to just let you kind of take everything away and start by telling people your story and a little bit about yourself.
So I'm Rachael Sebastian. I shoot under Mira 3 Photography. A lot of people get tripped up on my name. They call me Mira or call me Myra sometimes. But my original idea was to change my name eventually. But my business kept growing, so I kept it. And Mira means look in Spanish. One of my college degrees is in Spanish, so I want people to know I'm bilingual, just to serve the audience. I've been taking pictures my whole life. I started on film when I was young in the 90s. So I love that film aesthetic and vibe is coming back. I have my film cameras ready to go. Just coming from film and then going to digital and now mirrorless. Everything is so easy for me. It's kind of hard to step back, but I really appreciate that younger people are starting to play in film again. I love that. So I've been taking pictures my whole life, got really started in 4-H. My mom was my first teacher and mentor, and she's a journalist. And later in life, I also became a journalist. And then I worked a bunch of jobs. I was a teacher. I was economic development admin assistant and got back in the classroom just because a small town, they needed teachers. So I started teaching yearbook, which allowed me to show students how to use cameras. And from that, I really got back into my love of photography. I shot in college at KU. I studied print journalism and did photojournalism there. So it was really fun teaching the kids, and I just really uh, got the hook back in me for taking photos. And I thought, I'm going to start asking people, to take photos if I could take their photos. And then it never really stopped. In fact, it grew so big that I stopped teaching and I'm in my second year full time as a photographer. So that's how I got started.
That's awesome. Oh my gosh, I love hearing everyone's journey of what kind of started them in photography and built to where they are now in their super successful businesses. So, thank you so much for sharing a little bit about your background. I would love to hear about how you got into Western photography and how that kind of niche started and things like that.
Sure. So I really got started during the pandemic. A lot of photographers got started then because it was a hobby that you picked back up. You could go outside and do. So I started taking photos again, really during the pandemic, and did a lot of training and everything. And then I'm the daughter of ranchers. They still ranch in the Flint Hills, north of Manhattan, Kansas. And I asked my dad, I said, I want to do a cowboy shoot. And my dad is the most stoic, introvert kind of guy. So it kind of took me a while to get him in front of the camera. But in the meantime, I thought, I'm out here in cowboy country. I now live in Western Kansas in Tribune, and Garden City, Scott City, south of there is cowboy country. So I started shooting with cowboys around here. And really, it's like an homage to my parents because they're ranchers and really just wanted to capture that way of life. I was a newspaper reporter for the Garden City Telegram, and I dealt with a lot of ag stories. So I got to meet a lot of cowboys and got to network at a lot of feedlots that way. And just some of the perception of agriculture and how agriculture was portrayed in media was very misleading. So I was really proud to be a Kansas reporter and be able to tell that story. Um, anyway, that's a roundabout way of answering that question. But the Western just really took off because it's my background, and out here in Southwest Kansas, it's something that I really love telling the story of. And so my photography business just kept allowing me to do that and really get back to my roots, I guess.
Yes, I love it. I love it. Talk more about just the journey of documenting ranch life, what that kind of looks like as a rancher's daughter, and that journey of truly documenting the authenticity of ranches.
Yeah, sure. So, um, being a cowboy's daughter, and hopefully I actually hope he listens to this, but anybody who's ever worked cattle knows that, you have to be yelled at. You're going to get yelled at. It's just a way of life. I think that and being a journalist and knocking on doors gave me a little bit of the bravery to go out into that world. And I will tell you, the first branding that I shot, I was very in the way. Um, I was standing at a fence line, and they were cutting the cattle to sort them. And one of the guys made a comment about how I shouldn't stand right there, and I told him, well, maybe you should learn to work your horse better, to cut the cattle. And so, since then, it was kind of like you have to engage in a little bit of that smack talking. I did eventually move, but anyway, so you just have to be willing to put yourself out there, and not be in the way, but at the same time, um, have a little bit of that like gall to be in the way, and kind of go back and forth with the Cowboys. Um, anyway, so to answer your question a little bit better, um, I just started going on different cattle ranches, different feedlots, shooting with Western people, shooting with people who had horses, and I really love the way that it documents legacy for me and my career and my brand, and my family. It's all about legacy. So I really love being able to share that and give that to other people. I know my favorite photos of my parents are them with their horses, them horseback with me, on their own land and that kind of thing. So I really wanted to give that gift to other people. And then with my parents being um, in their 70s, a lot of the photos were actually from the 70s, from the 80s, when you have that kind of older film, the cowboy vibe, the trucker hats, they're kind of hippies, all that style. That's very timeless now, and that's like my whole aesthetic, my whole vibe is kind of just giving a nod to that and those old photos of my parents. So that's the style that I strive for, and also the gift that I try to give my families is, something to treasure, look back on, and have.
Yes, I relate to that so closely because I feel like those are some of my favorite photos too. One of my favorite photos that I have, like with my dad, who is an old cowboy too. He's not old, Dad. If you're listening to this, you're not old. You are young and spry. But is of me and him horseback, like me riding double on horses with him out in the pasture, or him feeding cows with me in his arms, or things like that. So I love that being a photographer allows us that ability to capture those memories for people that, they're not on their phones all the time. They're not really focused on capturing those memories for themselves. And so I feel like it puts us as photographers in a really great position to be able to do that for them.
Yes, yes, I totally agree. And ranches and land and people, they're always changing. A lot of the bigger ranches that I go on, they have a turnover. If you have friends who are cowboys, they're constantly in motion. Moving is nothing for them. So I really like to document the way that a place is at that very present moment, and the people on it, the animals on it, some of those bloodlines of horses. Like I shoot for Tongue River Ranch down in Dumont, Texas, and some of those foals are going to be the last lineage of some of these famous foundation horses. And so that's what I really really love.
Yes, I love that whole thought process that you just went through and everything. You just got back from a trip to Texas. I personally would just love to hear a little bit more about that and how that trip went. Tell the people what you were kind of doing, things like that as well.
Yeah, sure. I love Texas. I had never really spent any time there. And I live just, north of the Oklahoma and Texas panhandle right now. And um anyway, so how I kind of got started in Texas, and I know that's not what you asked me, but I'm a storyteller, so I'm gonna kind of go back to that if you don't mind. Okay. So, had never really spent much time in Texas, and I was doing some marketing work for a horse breeder in Scott City, Kansas. And he told me that I need to go down to the Remuda sale at the Four Sixes. So I did that in October of 2022. And after the sale, they open up the ranches where you can go tour them. And I had just received some not great news about a family member and his health. He's fine now. And so I knew I'm not going to go back to where we were staying. I'm going to go and look at these ranches. They're these amazing, beautiful places. So I went to Tongue River and was just, it's breathtaking. All the buildings are really the old style ranch buildings with the twisted pine, and the insides are the tile floors, and it's just beautiful. It sits up on top of a hill. You can see bluffs to the west. And as I'm going there, all the mares and the foals were coming over the hill to the west into the sunset. So I got to get my camera out and shoot them, and loved the images, sent them to the ranch. And the ranch loved them, used them, and I asked them, can I come back and shoot? And they told me yes. So then they ended up hiring me to do sale horse videos for the Bermuda sale that next year. So that was kind of how I got my foot in the door in Texas. And then just ever since, I've loved going down there. So on my way one time to Tongue River, I took a scenic route. There's a bunch of different ways to get down where I'm from, down to the Paducah, Dumont, Guthrie area. And so I took a different route, and I went through Turkey, Texas, because I'd heard about Bob Wills Days, and a lot of friends go to that. And I'd heard about Hotel Turkey, and I thought, I'll just check this out. So I went in, introduced myself. I know as a photographer, they're amazing there. They're the most hospitable people. And I thought this hotel would be a great place to host a content day or retreat or something. And then I was another Kansas photographer, Michaela White. She was talking about doing one at Paladuro. Well, when I went to Turkey, they told me the canyons are just 15 miles. And I thought, Paladuro Canyon, because in my mind, that's the only Texas canyon that I knew. So I told Michaela, we should stay at Hotel Turkey and we can shoot at Paladuro. Then I got out a map, and this is pretty, I mean, I have all these mishaps, and I used to be a map librarian, so you would think I would know my way around and look at maps. But got out the map, and it's Caprock Canyon. And so I thought, okay, that's not Paladuro. Paladuro is not far, but it's definitely not the 15-minute. So anyway, I talked to her, and she's like, well, let's just do Caprock. So um, she asked me if I wanted to co-host with her, and I said yes. I love Texas and any excuse to get there. But I told her that we shoot a little bit different styles. And so I told her, well, if we're going to Texas and I'm going to co-host, we have to do a cowboy shoot. And she said yeah. So a gal who had done a mentorship with me, she and her husband agreed to model. And so I set up the cowboy shoot down there at Caprock Canyon. It was amazing. It was beautiful. But to maximize the most out of the trips that I take, I also take the brands that I market. I take them with me. I work for a Hell Creek Hat Company, and then um, I work for. Well, I do work for. That's a better way to phrase that. I do work for Billy Allen Feeds in Scott City. So I took both of those down with me. I have some really fun brands coming up. I'm super excited about. Just to maximize the content of the trip. So I did some after the workshop in Turkey. I went to Paladaro Canyon and met up with a cowgirl, Avi Schlam, and she doesn't have a huge social media presence, but most people around the cowboy community know her because she has a rodeo company and she has bucking horses. and she has such long red hair. She's very, very recognizable. I met her at the Ultimate Cowgirl Challenge, not Ultimate Cowgirl Challenge, but Extreme Cowgirl Challenge, yes, in Leota, Kansas last year, and just really liked her vibe. She and I clicked, and she agreed to shoot with me. So I did this shoot with her. We shot for Billy Allen Feeds and Hell Creek Hat Company. And then, of course, while I'm down there, I love to maximize my time. I love to network. I love to see my people. So I had two gals join me for who had done my mentorships, and they're right down in that area. So I just asked if they wanted to come and shoot. So they did. So it was a really filled weekend. I also, the day before we did our content in the canyon, I shot with Wild and Wanted, who's Echo Swearingen. She's an online buddy. Most of my people that I meet are my online buddies because I'm on an island out here by myself. So she told me that if she ever needed a model, or if I ever needed a model, that she would model for me. So she has, I believe, Patsy Teal is 5 months. Sorry, Echo, if you're listening. She has a daughter, a new baby, newish baby, and then their son. And so they hadn't had family photos taken. So we traded out kind of photos for modeling, and then I had a mentor with me. So yeah, busy weekend. It was just Friday to really Monday was the last shoot, and we packed a lot in, but it's so gorgeous down there, and the people are amazing. So
Wow. Oh my gosh, that is a lot to do in one weekend, but very much maximizing your time, and I fully understand that. Justine and I were just talking on the last podcast that, whenever we do weekend shoots that are just, like, regular shoots, I always try to absolutely pack my weekends full because I'm crazy and like to try and maximize my time the most. So, I fully understand, and when
yes.
you're in gorgeous country with amazing people, like, you have to. You're not just gonna sit around and do nothing with the daylight that you have outside.
Right, absolutely, and especially we were Saturday when I was shooting with, the Swearingen family, that's Echo. It was a little bit chilly, but then the rest, I mean, it was 75 degrees. It was gorgeous.
Yes.
But yeah, I'm a wife and a mom, and so if I'm gonna be away from home, I'm gonna work every second that I can. That way, when I get home, I can relax a little bit, and I have really fun stuff to edit, which I love
Mhm.
when I come back from those trips. But yeah, Texas has been so kind, so welcoming to me. And I mean, a lot of these people are other photographers, or I'm going into a region where there are other photographers, and they've been nothing but kind and welcoming and, um, reaching out, networking. It's been amazing. So,
That's probably one of my favorite things to do as a photographer that I feel like I live in Marysville right now, so just kind of near where you're from, and, I feel very much on an island sometimes as well. It's not quite as bad as way western Kansas can be where you're at, but networking with my online community and just kind of, like, making those connections makes you feel a lot less alone and a lot less like you are on an island. Like, I cannot recommend styled shoots or content weekends or anything like that enough. I would love to hear a little bit more about kind of your thought process behind storytelling as a photographer in the Western industry. You said it before, and I said it in the intro. You are a storyteller at heart, and I would love to kind of hear your thought process behind sharing stories with the lens.
I really like to tell stories from start to finish, kind of like that. Kind of like my back home roots, and then how I've gone west, and even if it's just Kansas West, I'm on mountain time, so I'm very west. um but I like to just tell those stories from start to finish. We see I overshare on social media. I don't overshare about myself. I don't overshare about my family, but I overshare photos. I can't just, it's hard for me to just post one, because then I think it's the photojournalist in me and that training that I like to tell the story from start to finish. I like it to have continuum. I like it to be in order. Uh, so yeah, I can't just post one photo because to me that just doesn't tell the whole story. I like to draw people in, keep them there, keep them scrolling, keep them involved. And so that's kind of one of the things that I really like to do with my photos. And kind of back to the Texas ranches and home ranches too. I love, and I haven't done one yet, but I love when you go into a place like um, Tongue River. Just I work there the most out of the ranches that I go to, but they have coffee table books. The manager there, Bubba Smith, he was on the cover of the Texas Cowboys. I think it was. I don't want to say the date because I don't want it's getting back to him and it being wrong. In the 90s, we'll go with the 90s. Um, he was on the cover of that. So just flipping through those books, and they tell the story of the ranch and how it was at the time. That's what I try to do, like with each session, whether it's just their animals or their families or that kind of thing. It's so cool to me how valued photographers are in the Western industry. And especially me being a former journalist, sometimes those worlds really clash. Just trying to get those stories and document things, because when you're on others' land or you're dealing with others' animals, they're very particular on how they're portrayed to the public and the practices that they do. So, telling that story in a positive light sometimes, um, it's not really a challenge that we face, but it's something that you have to get good at doing, or you have to understand the way to do it, um, so that you show animals, ag people, in the best light. And for me, sometimes stepping away from, being a journalist, these are not sources anymore. They're clients. So that has been just, a little bit of a switch and a transition for me. But yeah, I love that I still get to tell the stories, because that's my favorite part and the most important part for me.
Yeah, absolutely. How would you say, like, there's obviously still a big difference between journalism and your photography business that you have now. What would you say, like, the biggest difference is that you've had to switch in your way of telling stories, or has there really been a switch for the way that you tell the stories now?
Um, there really there really hasn't been a whole lot. They go hand in hand. When I'm photographing a session, I'm kind of writing the story in my head. Um, I was not, I was a print journalist and a reporter. I was not the greatest writer. I do have like some KPA awards and this and that. But um, anyway, there's kind of a formula that you follow when you're writing for journalism, and it's like lead, bridge, quote. And that's kind of my photos. That's kind of how I like to order them, or take them, is get an attention and then connect it and then give the meat of the story. And I try to do that in my photographs. But yeah, the biggest thing, is going from source to client. um, and sometimes when I'm talking to people and they're telling me things on ranches, and some things, you can't repeat or shouldn't know or something. And there's like the journalist in me that's like, is this off the record? I'm like, that doesn't have to be, they're a client now. And then also with friendships. I mean, when I was a newspaper reporter, you can't be friends with your sources, with your subjects. That's a conflict of interest. Um, and now I've really enjoyed where I can get to know people and know people on a social level and not just professional. I mean, you have to keep it within the realms of professionalism, but I've made a lot of really good friends doing this work, which I'm a social person. Contrary to my living in a village of 72 people, I live in a very small place. I am very social, so it's a nice outlet for that.
Yeah. I would love to hear a little bit more about the way that your brain works on a photo shoot with the lead, bridge, and what did you say the last part was?
Quote,
Yeah, lead,
like a
bridge,
quote.
quote. I would love to hear that breakdown a little bit more.
Okay, so when you're writing a news story, you want to get somebody's attention. So this is kind of how I present myself, my photos on social media, or even taking them. Your first photo, you want it to be the most dramatic. It's going to draw people in. And then your bridge is connecting that quote to like the meat of your story. So then the next photo, I like to, maybe take it a little bit farther back where you see the whole picture. And then the third photo, something like it's a quote from somebody. So maybe something like pretty personal, a detail, hands. Us Western photographers, we have it so easy because we have so many textures to work with, reins, ropes, latigos, bits, bridles, that kind of thing. Jewelry. I mean, we love our jewelry. So.
Yes, for those of you listening on the podcast, you just missed the entire show of the stack, the gorgeous stack that she has on her hands right now. We definitely do love our jewelry and love our texture, and I think that we are just so blessed in that aspect too, that we have so much to work with that you don't see other places. Like one of my favorite things to photograph is like older gentlemen's hands, like old ranchers' hands. Oh my gosh, they do something to my soul. I don't know what it is. Like they just
Yes.
make me
Yes.
happy.
Yeah, and I don't know if you know who Jerry Gazelle is.
Yes.
He's a Texas cowboy. Yeah. He has the best hands. They're very unique, very, very just Jerry. I mean, everybody knows him by his hands. I I get in, and I'm sure, like as a creative, you probably know, I get in certain mindsets or certain brainstorming, and I thought about, I really am thinking about, doing a coffee table book of my cowboy photography, and calling it like, because you call a cowboy who's very skilled, you call him a hand. So I thought about doing like hands and hearts, and it's so corny, but I think like in the Western world, you can get away with a little bit of corny. So I
Oh
thought about
yeah.
doing that and showing like a bunch of different like love stories or old like the actual hands, but then also the people who are hands. So
Oh my gosh,
just
that makes my heart putter a little bit. Like, oh, I would
yeah,
probably cry reading that coffee table book. Like I thought coffee table books were supposed to be like lighthearted and something that the guests just look at when they want to, not something that, you know, makes you rip your
yeah.
heart out when you're reading it.
Well, that's yes. So, and the other thing that is constantly like playing in my head when I'm creating is I love stories, and I love Western love stories. So all of my friends joke about how that eventually I'm going to write like Western romance novels, and that is also something that I try to portray in my photography, um, just because it's such a good authentic love, and the love for your land, the love for your animals, all that ties in. And so that's what really lights me on fire, is being able to showcase that and being able to capture all those elements in a photo or a series of photos, for clients and also for myself, because I love to look at them.
Yeah, absolutely. I think my favorite photos to look back personally on, like as a photographer throughout my journey, have been those Western love story photos. Like one of the first photo shoots that I did with that sort of feel, one of my best friends, Nolan, he still is dating one of my amazing best friends now, Anna Kate, and I had them just do a free photo shoot and model for me. I was like, it was like one of my dead seasons. I was like, I just need to go out and I just need to create and I need to capture. And we having such a close relationship with them, I was able to just kind of like be like, hey, this is what you're gonna do, and just go do it and just go have fun. And we just sat there for like 3 hours documenting their story and their love. And I get get text messages from Anna Kate all the time of like, I just looked at my phone screen and I'm in love with this photo all over again. Or I go back and I'm like,
Yeah,
I want to just post this entire gallery on my social media and nothing else
I do.
because I'm
Mhm.
so in love with it. Like nothing else gets showcased on my Instagram other than this gallery.
Yes, absolutely. And I do. If on my Facebook, I mean, I think I shared, I don't know, 40 photos. And I guess on social media, you're not supposed to do that. I don't know. And then, with the algorithms, and then like on Instagram, I just post what I want when I want to. And then I know, like, oh, this time of day is not going to do as well, but that's when I have time to do it. But yeah, the Western love stories, that's what gets the most traction for me personally, and from friends and followers. Those love stories are just so beautiful. There's something about like the geometry of a cowboy hat against a sky or against terrain,
Mhm.
that just sets it off. Um, I don't know what that is, but
Yeah.
uh,
You are
it's the
not
best.
alone. You are not alone in that feeling. I relate very wholeheartedly to that thought process and just the ability to be a cowboy's daughter and capture the Western industry in such an amazing light and truly tell the story that is a story that is continuing to get lost over generations because people are more and more removed from ranches, from agriculture. We're more removed now than we ever have been. And there are people that are 5 generations removed from the ranch being born now that have never stepped foot outside of a city. And um, with the craze of Yellowstone, and don't even get me started on all of that stuff and all of that jazz, it's the Western way of life, like the true Western way of life is getting lost in translation sometimes. And I love the ability to go out and truly capture the heart and soul of cowboys in a way that future generations might not see. Like their future cowboys coming up are few and far in between that resemble what our parents stood for back in the day.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. In that some of that mainstream stuff, like Yellowstone, 1883, 1923, super good for my business and for a lot of
Yes.
Western makers too, you know. Um, but I love what you said about showing those generations, because that's like coming back to the legacy and what it's all about. And I have a friend, um who he cowboys up in Goodland, and that's on I-70. And the other day, I got a Snapchat from him, and he's catching a wild cow on I-70. And I said, I bet there are so many people, in Subarus. I drive a Honda, so no hate on Subarus. I'm just saying, um, you know, the taking pictures or watching, and he's like, yeah, there were a lot of people taking pictures. And then he does some roping on TikTok, and people are like, their cowboys actually exist, So I love being able to show people and tell people that this is still a job. Cowboy
Mhm.
is still a career, and a lot of the practices that they use are the ancient cowboy way of life, and that's still very much alive. So I love to showcase that, and really, I love showing off my friends, and their skills, their horsemanship, their the way they are with cattle. That to me is another a way that I really love using storytelling, is to tell those stories. Because I have a handy group of people that are are in my corner, in my reach, or on my model Rolodex. They're so impressive. They're all younger than me too, and way more handy with cattle and horses. So
Hey, you're handy with a camera. Like that's you're handy with a camera and I'm sure you're handy in other ways too. But
most
there's this TikToker that says I'm not a hand, I'm a thumb. I'm useful, but I'm not necessarily necessary, but it's really nice to have me around. And I like to think of myself as a thumb. I'm nice to have around. I'm very helpful when I need to be, but I'm not a
yes,
necessity type of thing.
yes,
But
yes.
give me a camera and give me a corner of a pen to sit in, I'll I'll be on fire all day.
Absolutely, yes. Um, one of my friends, she's actually got me back into horses, and she and her husband are the managers at Pyramid Ranch at Monument Rocks, which you get to come to. I'm so excited.
So excited.
Um, yes, it's gonna be amazing. But she's an amazing horsewoman. And she knows cattle. I mean, it's just the two of them out there, and it's 14,000 acres, and they have 1,100. The figure might be wrong. Sorry, Kyle. 1,100 cow calf pairs out there. So I keep a horse out there because Jess got me back into riding again. When I left for college at 18, I left my mare at home. And then I volunteered, and did some like therapeutic horse lessons in Garden City. I helped with those at Miles of Smiles when I lived out there. But didn't have a horse and didn't really ride. Occasionally I would steal the Brookover feedlot Cowboys horses after work. I'd show up and be like, hey guys, I want to ride some more. They'd been riding all day. But if you show up with red beer, it turns out that'll change their mind a little bit. But I keep horses out there. I had a gelding out there, and now I have a mare out there who's a Ferrari. I have no business owning her, but she's amazing. So they let me pretend to be a cowboy and help them, push cattle and check fence and everything. But I really enjoy it. It's been really amazing to get back into that. Really expensive, but
Yes, I fully understand. When I left for college, I did the exact same thing. And growing up, I was raised on a traditional cow calf operation. But my dad has been showing cattle since he was 13. And he used to be one of the road warriors that traveled like 300 of the 365 days a year, like when you could actually make money showing cows. Can't do that anymore. Spoiler alert for anyone listening. That's not really a thing. You do it for fun now, fun in quotation marks, heavy quotation marks. But he told me, he was like, you got to pick one. Like, we're either showing cows or we're riding horses every week. And I still have three mares back home, but those poor girls have not been rode like they should have. But when I went to college, I was like, well, now I'm not showing cows and I kind of want my mares, but they haven't really been touched that much, since I was 15 and decided I needed 3. So I fully understand, and then now living on my own now and stuff like that is just not necessarily something that I'm ready to commit to, the expensive, hobby of writing when I don't necessarily need them right now. I'm like, "You know what? They can go have babies back on the ranch, and I'll go love on them from afar."
there you go. Well, I know a spot in Marshall County if you ever need a place to stash a
That
horse.
is that is very true. I do have a very good connection now for somewhere that, I could go leave a horse if I needed to. That is bad. My fiance is gonna listen to this and he's gonna be like, "Shit, this is not good." But I love it. I would love to kind of talk a little bit, you touched on it a little bit about, the content shoots and, kind of going into the education side of photography and what led you to that, and then also just talk about your content shoots coming up and things like that.
Yeah. So I will be the first to admit that when it comes to being a technical photographer, I am not the best. There are things that I constantly have to Google, have to look up. Oh, I didn't know my camera could do that kind of thing. I will not sit here and boast that I am the handiest with a camera, but I will say that I put myself in situations that are wonderfully marvelous to photograph. And I just really wanted to give people that opportunity as well. Um, I don't believe in gatekeeping, as a Western photographer. I believe in the cowboy way and Western rules, that kind of thing. Some of the ethics of it, I could get pretty kind of particular or sticky about. But as far as gatekeeping, Monument Rocks is a beautiful place to shoot. I'm always out there. Just a little word to the public, you can't bring horses out there because it's a cattle ranch, it's private. But during the shoot, they do let us do that, with all the negative course papers and all that. So that's really cool. I've had to shy clients away. We can't do that because we've had people, out there writing. I say we like I live there, but I'm kind of an honorary resident out there. Anyway, so this, I really wanted people to see that the Monument Rocks is part of a cattle ranch, and it's so part of just the canvas of Western Kansas. So that's why I wanted to open that up to other people, just so they could get some of that experience too. Just there's nothing more beautiful than riding a horse and cattle in rough country. It's just gloriously, hopelessly romantic and beautiful. So I really wanted to share that. And I wanted to just share some of my networking side of things, connect people. I love meeting people. I love connecting with people. I love sharing legacy and heritage and that kind of thing. So that's kind of what led me to the content, creating content and workshops and that kind of thing. Like I said, if you ask me, like settings one, which I shoot mirrorless. And so sometimes, we'll call out our settings, and my settings are completely different from the DSLR girls, and guys. But anyway, so that's kind of like in a nutshell what led me to it. A really fun thing, and I don't know if Justine talked about this at all, but Open Triangle Photography, how we met was a really cool story. We both did the Kansas Ranchland and Trust photo contest. And I remember seeing her photographs, and I was like, these are pretty salty photographs. And then I looked to see who they were by, and I was like, why do I not know this person? And so that's how we just kind of reached out to each other. She kind of had the same thoughts, and we both are Western photographers, and so we just decided to join up and host West of East, which is going to be so awesome. We have Jerry Gazelle coming. He's amazing. He photographs so well. And he is a guy, I saw him at the 4/6 sale, the Bermuda sale in 2022. And I remember just watching him because he just had such a unique face. I had no idea who he was, like from Instagram or from TikTok or from anything. And so I was just, watching this guy. I watched him buy a stud colt. He bids like a gangster. And anyway, I just kind of forgot about him. And then one of those like sleepless early mornings, it's 4 a.m. or something, I just opened TikTok. I'm hardly ever on TikTok. But there he was. And so I had his name and his information. And so I reached out to him. We started networking, and I asked him to shoot, and he said yes, which is cool because he gets like inundated with requests for that. And then the jacket that he was wearing was from Master Supply Company. So they ended up contacting me and asking, if they send more jackets, can I go down there and shoot more? And so we did that. So that's how I met Jerry. Completely organic, like in-person way. Social media did connect that back together though. So I do have a lot to be thankful for on socials. But anyway, yeah, just sharing the people who I get to shoot with and the place where I get to shoot. I want people to enjoy that and to come experience that. So roundabout way of answering.
Yes, I am so ecstatic for the West of East content weekend and just experience with you and Justine. It's going to be an absolute blast of a weekend. And when I saw that, I knew I just had to jump on the opportunity. And to anyone listening, that your podcast is going to play right after Justine's. So they're going to get 2 full weeks of like, hey, you need to go do this next year. So, hey, you need to go do this next year. We're just going to like reinstill it when the West of East launches again next year. Get on that list, get out there, and all of those things. I would love to expand a little bit more and talk more about just kind of like the cowboy code and how that plays in to photography and photography in the Western lifestyle specifically, because I feel like it's such an important topic that we can't just dance around. We have to hit on it. And there's so many photographers out there who maybe they weren't raised by cowboys like we were, and they don't quite understand what that even means or all of that. So I'd love to hear your input on that.
Yeah, sure. So, I really emphasize not being in a position where, where I'm gatekeeping the Western world from anyone at all. But there are certain values and certain practices that are instilled in people that maybe people new to the Western industry don't know. I was raised in a very, oh, what do I want to say? We weren't all cowboy, all Western growing up. I mean, my mom, she's a newspaper reporter. We're world travelers. My brother is a teacher in Korea. My sister was in the Peace Corps. We went to KU, um, which is not the Ag School of Kansas. And Justine is going to give me a heck for that too. Um, but anyway, there are just certain codes and certain things, and a lot more photographers are touching on that. Um, just for instance, sharing clients or sharing sources or sharing locations, that kind of thing. If are networking with people and people offer those up to you, or, you meet somebody through somebody else, just, polite things to do is make sure, that third person who's connected you is involved a little bit in future interactions, just a kind of heads up kind of thing. Um, there was a photographer, I think just this week, who shared a couple like do's and don'ts. And one was, going after other people's clients or models or that kind of thing. I'm pretty guarded about my models. I will invite you to share shoots with me and shoot my models at any time. But it's just, the reaching out to them on your own is just kind of a code thing that we don't do. Or of course, if they reach out to others, that's a completely different story. But just some of the networking and connections that people are making or that people are having, or even ideas for shoots. If you take inspiration off of somebody, um, just credit them or reach out to them for some guidance or something, to make sure that if you're not ripping off an idea, but if you have an idea that's maybe not your own completely, or you took inspiration from somebody else. The other is like sharing images. It was just on my cell phone. I had my trailer image that I took the trailer minis, and a lot of us Western photographers do them. It's not an original idea. It's been going around for a while. Um, and I think, in the past, I'd probably done it too when I was a younger photographer, but just, sharing other people's. But mine was from my cell phone, and I just shared it on my Facebook page, and it got shared like, I don't know, 14,000 times or something. And people were using it for we're going to have a trailer shoot like this. And I'm like, okay, that's from a cell phone. So hopefully, on the quality of things. But just basic Western principles. Don't take what's not yours. Communicate with people on both sides of a transaction, that kind of thing. We have a lot of people new to Western photography or new to our game or something, that those principles and values just aren't just, paramount for them. So in order to expose yourself to those ways of life, you have to create experiences for yourself out on cattle ranches, with ranchers, with ag people, and then you'll get to learn what is important to them and what's not. I mean, a good example of this is I started shooting a lot of ranch rodeos, just local ranch rodeos, to get practice, because there's nothing more humbling than high speed action at 9 o'clock at night, you know. Um, but then you want to make sure that your cattle look good, that your horse looks good, that your rider looks good, and that maybe it's a fantastic shot for you and it has all the elements and it's really interesting. um, it might not be the best representation of the Western world just because a cowboy might not look good. Um, and when I say another thing, when I say cowboy, cowboy to me is a job. Um, it can be male or female, for me, just when I talk generally about cowboying. But the horse might not look good, or the cattle, it might suggest violence on cattle, which people love to jump on that and exploit that. Um, so just learning about what makes good pictures of people and animals, what makes a writer look good. Those are things that I would really encourage people getting into this industry to know. And some of my first shots, or some of my first practices, I was a little naive on ranch rodeo. I mean, my dad was a calf roper at rodeos, but I didn't photograph it. I rode my pony around, wasn't really watching a whole lot. Sorry, Dad. But so ranch rodeos are, they were kind of a little bit new to me, just getting back to the horse and Western world too. But I had my friend Jess, who she's my horse trainer, backup camera gal. She drives me places. She's amazing. Takes care of my palomino. Um, anyway, she taught me a lot about, this photograph is great, but look at that rider's position, or like, his hands are too high, or that guy's in that horse's mouth, or those kinds of things. Or the cattle look like they're in danger or they're struggling or something. So just to be mindful of those things, especially, if you're out on a branding or just out on somebody else's land, because you want to showcase the best version of the people, land, and the animals. And even the land, it was really hard when we were in that such harsh drought a couple of years ago. Me, for my coloring and my tones in my photos, it's great for me. I shoot very neutral. I like to, have people guess when my photos were taken, 1970 or 2023, 2024. Anyway, just make sure that you know what's important to people before you go out and think that I guess. Be vulnerable. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't be afraid to be kind of an idiot. I definitely am still on a lot of things that I just ask questions about. And there are some things that it's like, okay, should I post this or not? Because this is happening in that picture. And sometimes, somebody will say, that doesn't matter. It's fine. It's, um, but sometimes it does. And sometimes it's really important to someone. I always, when I'm in front of the camera, even like being on this recording right now, we are our own worst critic, of course. So I really like to consult with people before um, taking those photos or publishing something, to make sure that I've told the story in a correct way and in the most positive light, because I think that's the biggest like juxtaposition between being a photographer and being a former journalist, is now I can tell stories in the best light. Where before I wasn't able to. You have to tell two sides of the story, and you have to get the dirt and all that. Now I get to highlight what makes people happy and makes people tick. So I really want to be sure that I get that right. So when you're first coming into the Western industry, or ag, or even photography, just make sure that you're highlighting what people want you to highlight, and that can even be a face angle.
Yes, absolutely. I think that that is just so important to remember, especially in the agricultural industry where you kind of touched on it, that people like to find any situation or scenario where they can start to cast stones. And it's really important that you understand what you are photographing before you go and post it out for someone like PETA to go and grab it and use it for animal husbandry rights or something like that. Like one of my worst fears as so I do Western photography and then I also do like livestock shows. And I always tell my girls when we are editing photos that so if it's a photo of a lamb getting braced, I never want an open hand going on a back of a lamb because one of my biggest fears is having a screenshotted watermarked image that says Showboat Media Co. on it on PETA's website that shows a lamb getting like pulled off the ground because they're bracing into it. And we know as people in the agricultural industry that that is not hurting them, but it can be portrayed very wrong. Or in a branding pin, if you are getting a calf's face in there while it is actively getting a brand, that's maybe not the best angle to be at.
Yes. Yes.
Even though we know that it is actually very ethical for the animals and very safe and all of these things. People outside of the agricultural industry don't necessarily know that. So if you're coming in, be humble and don't be afraid to be perceived as stupid on the front end rather than on the back end. I
Yeah.
think it's a lot better to ask the question in the branding pin or to ask the question before you post it than to get someone texting you being, hey, you probably shouldn't have that photo on your website, or hey, that really isn't the correct way to portray this. I think you should probably take that down. That's gut
Yes.
wrenching. I would much rather feel stupid in a branding pen asking a cowboy something there than getting
Yes.
that on the back end. So don't be afraid to be humble.
Right. Like when I've shot for Tongue River, I let their media gal look at all the images and then she shows them to the manager before I would post anything. And there
Hmm.
are a couple, that you would be surprised, like they don't want that posted. And it's kind of, oh, dang it. But at the same time, like, if you're representing somebody or a ranch or something, you want, the best foot forward.
Yeah.
And some were just easy little nitpicky things like hands are too high when roping. And that's another thing, not I don't ever show calf's face in the branding pin. The flesh is interesting enough, the smoke and stuff.
Yes,
So
exactly.
yeah.
Absolutely. Well, we have touched on so many absolutely amazing things. And I know that everyone listening to this podcast has gotten so many tidbits of amazing information. I would love to, as we're kind of wrapping it up, I'd love to hear a piece of advice that you would give to young Rachel, whether that be young photographer Rachel or someone just like trying to figure out their life, anything like that, a piece of advice that you wish you knew when you were
I would say that don't give up the things when you're younger that light you on fire, because when you are at an older age, you tend to circle back around to those. And for me, that was horses and cameras. I was always had a horse, always had a camera, something that I love to do with my family, both of those things. And I lost touch with both of those for a while or at different junctures in my life, to just keep going with what makes you happy, because what lights you on fire when you're 10 years old is probably going to be the same when you're almost 40. And then also just start. Kind of wish that I would have started my photography business when I first started thinking about doing it, that I would have gotten a little bit more traction with it, because where I was when I started it, I was teaching, also going to school to get a third college degree, which I did not finish. So I could teach. So that's a whole other can of worms. But just make sure that what you're driving towards is what lights you on fire. I fell into teaching. I loved my kids, but it just was not my life's goal and passion. And my mind, was out the door when I was teaching them, and it began to just wander more and more with photography. Um, so I think that sometimes we fall into lifestyles, or we fall into jobs that are there and they're convenient and they're open. And in a small town, sometimes that's hard. But, battle through and find something that, doesn't feel like work every day, even though I've never worked harder in my life than I do now. Um, but I pinch myself because, like, when I was in the canyons in Texas, I remember just walking out and seeing, the vast canyons at Cap Rock at sunset. And I'm like, this is my job, you know? So keep with what lights you on fire. I think that's my biggest piece of advice.
Absolutely. I love that. That spoke to my soul, and I'm sure it did to so many others. I would love to end the podcast with a question I love asking everyone of for you personally, where are you going in the next year? What are your 2024 goals or aspirations? And then also for your business as well.
Sure. I've been thinking a lot about this lately as I'm looking at my schedule, and I have a really good photographer friend down in Texas, and we're trying to put together a content shoot. And there's absolutely no weekends. I love my weddings. I love my brides. In 2024 it's going to be my best year with weddings. But I think that I would, just for schedule's sake, take a little step back from that, to free up some more space for like content shoots and workshops and that kind of thing. I'm also loving the brand work that I'm doing, and I'm getting to work with, and I don't really like to name um who I'm working with until it happens, because I just feel like sometimes you jinx yourself or things come up or that kind of thing. But I'm working with some really amazing brands this year, and I'm loving that work. So I'm kind of looking to maybe replace more of that, um, replace that income or that space and that time doing brand work and content creation rather than weddings. I love my weddings. I just need to not take on so many, so I have more space for
Mhm.
that. Because at sometimes I miss where I just have that time to go out and shoot and go out and be creative. Because right now my schedule is so tight and so jam packed that sometimes that gets a little lost on the wayside. So in 2024, you're going to see a lot of wedding work from me. I have amazing brides, amazing places that I'm going to be shooting at. So I'm really excited about that. And then ended pretty much have my calendar filled with that. Um, and then I also get to do work for Tongue River again. I go down in March to shoot stallion pictures and videos. So I'm really excited for that. I love working with, I would consider them a brand that I work with. They're amazing. It's like family down there. And then 2025, really want to push that brand work. I'm, whether that's with um, boutiques or feed companies, or that kind of thing. So those are my main goals, and I'm super excited. But when I look at my schedule, I'm like, it needs a little bit more spacing. So
Yeah.
2025, that's where the spacing is going to happen. This year, I'm going to be sprinting again. It's a really good problem to have. I wouldn't consider it a problem. It's a blessing to me. Um, so that's where we're going.
I love it. Oh my gosh, I could not have related to that more as well as a person who currently still works a full-time job and does the photography stuff full-time and does this podcast full-time. I joke that I work three full-time jobs now. But I love it. It lights me on fire. I really do love being busy, but I was telling Justine that I'm so glad that I just didn't even think and pulled the trigger on signing up for the East of West, the West, the East of
West of East,
East. Sorry,
West of East.
the
Yeah,
West of East.
I was like, no, that was right.
The West of East because it is smack dab in the middle of my busiest season during the year. And I was going through my schedule a few weeks ago and I was like, darn it, why did I do that? Like, I had this show opportunity come up and I was like, why did I put that there? And then I was like, oh, yeah. I was trying to give myself an opportunity where I could sit back and relax and be creative and not have to take backdrop photos for a weekend and truly just go have some fun. So you spoke to me directly right there. So yes.
Yes.
Well,
I mean, because you get to the point where sometimes like I I happened a little bit in 2023 where it's like my camera didn't even come out of my bag on some places that I should have or been with me. Just because, sometimes you look at it, you're like, okay, that's more work, that's more culling, that's more editing. When I used to shoot bogus, not great photographs all the time because I enjoyed
mhm,
it. So I definitely need to create a little bit more space where I have that creative time. So I'm glad that you did that because yeah, you hit the nail on the head. You have to schedule. Sometimes you have to schedule that out, and sometimes it has to be a little bit of like a financial or a social commitment where
mhm.
you can't move that off your calendar. So
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Well, Rachel, we talked about so many amazing things today. Oh my gosh, I loved our conversation. It was truly wonderful. And I know that everyone got some tidbits out of this. Tell the people where they can find you and follow along on your journey.
yeah, so my website has been under construction for like 4 years because I can never get what I really love. Anyway, so X that. I'll keep you updated when that goes live. But I use socials, a lot of socials, a lot of networking, word of mouth. But I'm Mira3 Photography on Facebook, Mira3 Photography on Instagram, and then Mira3 Photo on my highly neglected TikTok. But I'm trying to do better at that. So
I think we can all relate to that last sentiment of the highly neglected TikTok. So yes, I think we're all there. But hey, go follow along. Go get her on all of your social media platforms if you related to Rachel on anything that she was talking about today, or just want to learn more, or get in on her next content retreat. I know that she would love to have you there and love to teach you a little bit about the cowboy way of life as a photographer. So thank you so much for tuning in for another episode, guys. If you like this episode, please go rate and review it down below. And as always, we will see you next week. Thank you so much. Bye bye.